You don't do any stories.
No, we never did. We always
It's kind of hard to believe
when
sometimes.
we were racing, we always said, you know, you don't bullshit each other because that is not going to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we didn't, you know, we didn't in the garage or after the race, or we tried to keep it right.
Yeah.
All right, let's introduce ourselves. Starting over here.
Okay. I'm Gary Colley.
And Gary, what was your role in all of this?
Pardon?
What was your role in all of
I do the body man, paint man, some welding, odds and ends.
this? Okay, we're going to go over here.
Jay Plyler, I drove this creation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Keith Colley. I built the engines and a lot of the car stuff. Mostly a mechanic, I guess.
Okay, Bill.
I'm Bill Ziegler. I just helped out wherever I could.
We were the
Wherever
chassis
they
man.
wanted, I monkeyed around chassis and built parts for it and so on.
Humility will not work here, so feel free. First of all, obviously, this is the first time, honestly, we've never had this kind of magic group together in all our interviews. And so how did you kind of get together?
I don't know. How did we get together?
I think you and
Oh,
Jim Moffat and Gary started this
Yeah,
thing
we
and then
played
invited
guitar
me
together.
in.
Yeah.
I wasn't in on the
Jim
putting
and I
this
played
together.
guitar together,
That's what it was then.
and then we had that old Ford Coupe that you drove, and we decided we'd improve.
Yeah, we decided to do something different, so I thought, well, Stateline sounds like fun, so let's go to Stateline.
Let me read something here. It said, not since 1960, when Tom Dill made his dramatic guardrail smashing entrance into the new car division, have the local fans and drivers been talking so much about a young driver as they have about Jay Plyler. From his first appearance at Stateline, it was apparent that Jay and his pit crew of Jim Moffat, brothers Keith and Gary Colley could build nice-looking race cars. His immaculate blue and white number 79 was the most professional-looking car in the entire Sportsman's class. But last Sunday, he proved that he could do more than just build cars. He could drive them as well. Did you come in with a splash? I mean, here you are from Bradford, Pennsylvania, with a flashy car, and you kind of win. Quite right. Were you received early on in the local racing community?
Not back in where we started. We were just there, you know.
Yeah, we were there.
But we had old equipment, and that coupe was our first venture to ever build anything. And it was just all put our heads together and build it, and it turned out to be a pretty good car.
Now, Jay, just for your purposes, probably to get everybody all connected. Jay, how did you get into the racing business?
Originally,
Yeah.
well, this Jim Moffat was one of the owners of the little coupe that we're talking about. He was a race fan. He wanted to race, and he and I built a '58 Ford for the Bradford Speedway. That's how I got started with him. We only raced there 1 year, and we knew that was not the place to be. And I did race go-karts previous to that.
Was there during that time period? Was there sort of an idol, somebody you were modeling yourself off of?
Well, my brother-in-law, Kenny Walters, started back in the Smithport McKean days, Rowlett and all, and I was in my teens. As a matter of fact, I was at that in your DVD of the first 10 years.
Yeah.
The team race that they had I was there that day with my brother-in-law. I was 15 years old.
Oh, really?
And I don't think I made it back until, see, we couldn't drive in New York State until we were 18. So I probably didn't get back up there until maybe 60. But I really liked that, your DVD, because it filled in all the gaps, you know, for me. And the guys at Stateline, they were the ones that we figured were, I mean, they were the best we ever saw.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
They were the heroes,
Whiteheads and Johnny and
Squirt Johns.
Squirt and Bobby was coming into his own in the 60s. He got better.
Yeah.
He got better after we started racing.
Yeah, got a whole lot.
I mean, you know, he got harder and harder to beat.
You're talking about Kenny Walters being a family. Now, he goes back a ways. Did he have a role model himself? Was there a guy in that grouping back in the 50s
You know,
and
it's
60s?
probably Squirt Johns, because Kenny named had a 111, 111, and Squirt was 511. And I know he thought highly a score, as I did, and we went to Stateline. We had no idea in the world we'd ever be racing against them because we went with the coupe, and they were all in the late model. And we never even, did we ever even talk about building the late model?
Never even thought about it. Never thought.
Never
yeah.
thought about it.
Never
If it
thought
wasn't for Russ Thompson, we never would have. Russ asked me to drive his late model, and I wasn't ready for it, and we, but that's how that happened.
So you took out the coupe and you come up there, was it 1968? Who was the guy to beat then?
Ronnie Blackmer, when we built that coupe, all those hours that you spent in the garage, we said, we discussed it openly and honestly amongst ourselves. And we said, well, there's not even, you don't even think about beating him. And then there was a group of 4 or 5 guys that fought for second through 5th or 6th. Lyle Brown, Seeley, John Seeley?
Yeah.
Rod
Terry.
Terry,
Terry
excuse me, Terry
Seeley.
Seeley. I guess I can. Skip Earl,
Skip. Yeah.
Stan Stevens?
Stan Stevens,
Yeah.
and Rod Barton was pretty fast too. He had a real fast car. And we said, we'll be lucky if we can fit in with them toward the back of that group. If we can just, if we can finish in that 5th, 6th, 7th back in there, we'd be pretty happy. Then that's basically where we did start, but we progressed from there. But that's where we fit in. We figured we could beat there were a lot of cars that really weren't great race cars, as you know. That class wasn't. They had some really good ones, and then the rest of them were just there. And we had an idea we could beat those guys. We had no idea in the world we'd ever beat Ronnie. I mean, we didn't. We were totally realistic.
What was it that made Ron so unbeatable?
He, as you know, he said in an interview that one of the reasons is that he had cars built by Frank Roman. And Frank was ahead of his time. And plus Ronnie was pretty talented, And there's another guy that got better, He got better and better and better.
Yeah. We made him get better.
Well, he'll tell you that.
Well, he did.
Well, he got lazy there. He was winning pretty easily. And I think the other guys that we talked about that were running 2nd through 5th or 6th, they pretty much conceded the fact that they were never going to beat him. That's just the way it was. You know what I mean? And then it's like anything else, once they get beat, then other people jumped on it. And they found out that they could too. But Ronnie's still the best. I mean, he's still.
One thing we did do, clean that class up.
Yeah.
The cars got looking better and better and better.
Yeah, well, we'll take a little credit for helping that class because it was it was their 2nd division, but unless you're a Ronnie Blackmer fan, it wasn't very exciting racing because he won them all.
You talk about the cleaning it up. I mean, not only did it look nicer, I mean, the cars were painted better, and you really added some class. Back to the point of, again, most of the drivers of that class, and even the ones you mentioned, were sort of that Panama, New York, kind of local, regional guys, and all of a sudden, like the late models, Squirt coming in from Brockway, you come in from Bradford. I think you probably came as far away as anybody. Was it because of the track? Was it because of the money? What was it that kind of drew you guys here?
Definitely was that. I mean, that was almost like Daytona. That
was big time racing.
I mean, they paid more. And it was more.
Have you ever been to Bradford Speedway?
Though we've always said that Bradford Speedway is a perfect track to start. Everybody should start there, because if you can learn to pass there, you can pass anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was we did a lot of things there that helped us down the road. But we knew 1 year was enough, And they paid a lot more up there.
Even 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I mean, so that was just the money day was worthwhile coming up, and
That, and it was more professionally run too. We liked that part of it.
so let's talk about just quickly those characters who ran it. Len Briggs, what did he mean to you guys?
Go ahead.
I don't know. Those guys are always great.
They treated us great.
Yeah, they were always good.
Probably Leonard's the only one that I ever had a run in with, and I knew then he was right. You know, he was, a lot of times, he was considered the bad guy. Well, he's the only one that made decisions on the cars. So, you know, he was the enforcer. And we had a discrepancy with our car, and he won. And, but you know, actually, those guys, they treated us right, and they ran, at that time, they ran the best dirt track program within hundreds and hundreds of miles of here. I mean, we used to travel some as spectators down to the Pittsburgh area and different places. They weren't run as well as Stateline area. So it was simple.
What about Lloyd Williams?
Well, I like Lloyd. He was a great announcer, but I never felt that he was a big fan of mine. He always called me Jay Plyler. And it didn't bother me one bit. But a lot of fans, they'd come over and they'd say, "We told him that that's not the way to pronounce your name." Well, he just kept saying it. You know? So I think he did it out of spite, you know, but it didn't bother me. In fact, Ronnie Blackmer, he still calls me Plyler. I only see him once or twice a year. But Lloyd was a good announcer. I mean, at that time, boy, he was good. Door handle to door handle.
Yeah, bumper to bumper, door handle.
Door handle to door handle. Yeah.
Track is
They're running all the way from the
treacherous and
inside to the outside.
Yeah. Squirt Johns from far away, Barack away.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely, yeah.
But he was a good announcer.
Yeah, he was.
And of course, Jerry was the track maintenance, and there wasn't a better track anywhere. I mean, we went to other tracks, and they were terrible. We thought they were, and those guys thought they were okay because it was normal to them, you know.
Would you say, Bill?
they were stony and rough and
Other tracks were
Oh,
terrible.
terrible tracks.
Terrible.
I mean, people wanted to race, they raced.
Yeah.
Who was the guy making the calls if there was interference and the potential black flag or anything like that, or the disputes? Was that Jerry, or did the flagman control that?
I think the flagmen ran the
Yeah.
show then. Not like they didn't have earphones and somebody up above was telling them when to throw the yellow.
Yeah.
The flagmen ran the show.
Yeah. And during that time period, was that Ponder? Or was it
Nelson.
Ed
Ed
Nelson?
Nelson. Yeah, I remember Jim Ponders only as a fan back in Smithport era. But who was it? You said Ed Nelson?
Ed Nelson.
Before him,
Whitey Gorsuch was a,
I don't know that we ever raced under him.
Yeah.
Pete Abers from Bradford.
Yeah.
He was a flagman. And, you know, nationally there were drivers that condemned those guys, but I don't think we ever had a problem with them. I don't ever remember having a problem with a flagman.
He was in
Ever.
control. I mean, he was usually right. I mean, he was in control.
They did
Yeah.
control
Go
the
do what he
track,
says,
yeah.
that's all. You know?
Yeah.
You actually were named Rookie of the Year back in a place called Hummingbird in it was 66, I guess. Where was Hummingbird? Is that
Down in DuBois, Pennsylvania.
is that right?
The year that Jim Moffett and I built that old 58 Ford, we ran Bradford Speedway on Sunday night and Hummingbird on Saturday night. But we didn't run every night at either track. I mean, you know, it wasn't a full-fledged deal. We ran Hummingbird probably half the year. And I guess I didn't realize it. I was the Rookie of the Year. And it tells you anything about my age, it had an Etzel engine in it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. We dug it out of a wrecked car down in Wilcox in the middle of the winter.
Then this article goes on to say that after 1966, in fact, it was in 1966 was the first time you'd met Ron Blackmer at an event where the track management was short of cars and invited outside drivers to compete. Ron entered and, needless to say, won many features. After taking a year off to build a summer camp near Sugar Run, Jay and his crew started building their car in January. None of them had enough tools to build the car, so they had to pool everything together in Jim's garage. Is that right?
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
Two-car garage.
A small two-stall
Small,
brick garage. that was cold.
Yeah, real
They
cold.
had a heater about that big, and the only thing it would do is warm your hands. You
Yeah.
could go over and get your hands warm. You could see your breath in there all winter.
And a welder running, that might,
The welder made more heat than the stove.
How about the hammer?
This is a true story. We pulled our tools. Keith said, well, my dad has a hydraulic jack he's not using. And I said, my dad's got some safety stands. And we gathered up odds and ends. Our toolbox was this big, literally. That's the only tools we had. And we got to started on the car, and we didn't have a hammer. And Jim Moffitt said, well, I don't have one, but I'll buy one, and then I'll have it for my house also. Good idea. Next night we go up, he bought a claw hammer. That's what we built that coop with, a claw hammer. Now Keith was a mechanic by trade, and he had an excellent set of tools at work, but you
well, we
can't
transport
sacrifice
them.
them. He dragged a lot of them back and forth.
I
I'll tell you.
dragged a lot of them back and forth.
Yeah, doggone right.
Well, the article goes on to say, I'm not sure where Randy gave me this article. The car is a source of pride for the four Bradford men, but also sort of an automotive misfit. Although it was the first car that any of them had ever constructed, the 39 Ford had seen 13 years of racing before the Colleys bought it, they decided to try something different. The body on the car is completely removable when they need to work inside the car. It is fastened on by just 10 bolts and can be removed in 10 minutes. Its roll cage stays intact, and without the body, it resembles a super modified. The joke about the car is exactly what kind it is. As Keith jokingly responds to a question as to its make, how much time do you have?
I remember that.
The engine is a 300 plus Ford, while the body is a 1936 Chevy with a Plymouth suspension system, because they all like the torsion bar. Is that an accurate description of this car?
Pretty much, yeah. Except the engine was still stock 300. It was not 300 plus. It was just it was a throwaway engine. It was
Yeah.
a warranty engine that they replaced at Ford Garage where I worked. And I scarfed it up and waited till they didn't want it back anymore, and then that was our engine.
Is that
It
right?
was a reject.
Who was you kind of masterminded this sort of mutt of a car? I mean, somebody had to sit down and try to figure out the mating of all this stuff. And I'm obviously speaking out of my league now, but I mean, you got different car parts, different. And this is
Yeah.
It was probably a joint effort, although I'd give Keith the credit, most of the credit for engineering, and all the credit for the mechanical part, like the engine and that, second to none.
But,
And that's no secret.
well, we all like the Plymouth frame with this
Yeah.
torsion bar suspension.
Yeah, I think the Plymouth frame, you guys decided before I got in there, so I didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, we thought it was a lot stronger. and
But it was a good
It
idea.
was a better one. Yeah, it worked pretty good. Yeah, we were pretty happy. But you make whatever you got, you make it work. You figure out how to make it work, and you make it work.
We had a Volkswagen gas tank.
I had a
too.
Volkswagen, yeah. No fuel cells then, baby.
and I suppose you had a Rolls Royce sticker someplace on there too.
No, we didn't. We should have. We did. Should have had the Bulldog on the hood or
A
something.
Beamer.
Yeah.
Did then obviously this is designed to go to Stateline and other places in 1968. Where else did you race other than Stateline in '68?
There we go.
No, that was it. I mean,
State
that
line,
class was unique to State Line and Erie. Their rules, we built the car to fit State Line Erie rules. Everything was 100% legal to the rules. And it wouldn't have been competitive had we gone somewhere where they run so-called modifieds. It wouldn't have been competitive
Right.
because they had frame rails, bigger tires. You build a car to fit the rules where you're going to race. Well, that's what we did.
We did run a little bit at Bradford Speedway one night.
Yeah, one day.
And you remember that? Why?
Well, what happened is
We got rained out at
we got
Erie.
rained out at Erie, and we were ready to go. It was 3:00 in the afternoon, and Jim Moffitt, who was one of the owners, he was involved. Well, he had married into the family that owned that speedway, and he said they're talking about having an invitational at the end of the year for the sportsman class. He said, I'll call them and see if they want us to bring the car up. It would be a promotional tool.
Just to
Because a
go
lot
out
of
and
Just
sponsor.
tool around.
Yeah.
And it would, And it would be fun to take the car up. Okay, so we did. We went up. And we left the Erie gear in, which was considerably taller gear than what you would need for that little track. But we didn't care. We didn't go to race. So we went up and went around, and I'm sure that they were announcing about the future of a race there. So we go back in, we're ready to hook up, and they come out and they said, hey, we got a match race with you and a local track champion.
It was Joe Tomes.
Joe Tomes. I
Wait-
said, you
wait
gotta
a
be
minute.
kidding me, you know? Yeah, Joe Tomes. And he had a little modified, it was quite a creation, a big 427 Ford engine and big tires, and it was quite a thing, you know? I don't know what body it was. It was
Mustang.
Mustang body, yeah.
Mustang. Yeah.
And I said, we're not gonna go out there with, you know, they have no, I'll go on out. I thought, well, I'll just go out and let them go, you know, and go around a couple laps. Well, they give us a green, and I went, and he didn't go, evidently, I thought, you know. Pretty soon the yellow, 2 laps, the yellow come out. And I thought, where's the wreck? Red flag.
Red flag, yeah.
Where's the wreck? There he parked it and going into turn 3, you know, up on the fence.
Yeah, he flipped
Then
it.
I think, oh my God, I hope I didn't crowd him. It was a big race to him that night, champ. So I
You were
stopped.
half a lap ahead.
Well, I didn't know that.
2 laps.
Yeah, I stopped. I said, did I run you up? No, he said, I ran it in there too hard trying to catch you. I didn't realize it, you know. And we had a 6-cylinder, but the deal was our car weighed 1,900 and his probably weighed 3,900, you know.
I don't think it weighed that much.
No.
Well, it
all
was a
true.
monster.
It was.
But that was the first wing we had made out of plywood.
Yeah.
Everybody called it a sandbox.
Yeah.
But that's the only time we didn't race the state.
That was the only time I was on another track, I think. We would go to Hummingbird. Didn't we go to Hummingbird one night? Just for
Yes, we did.
the heck of it. It was at the end of the year or something, and they had
But when you build a car for a set of rules, the car won't necessarily work somewhere else.
Let me ask you about that wing. You guys are the first guys to have a wing on a sportsman car. 69, I believe.
Yep.
Okay. Where did you get the idea from?
Sprint cars.
Well, everybody, yeah, I mean, all classes all over the country had wings. It was nothing unique. But what it came from was we were running pretty good at the time we were bored, remember?
Yeah, we got rained out. We had the car ready to go, so we didn't have anything to do that week. So
And I think Jim Moffitt or somebody said we ought to put a wing
Let's
on
put
it,
a wing on it.
jokingly. So we got the rule book out, and there was nothing that said you couldn't have a wing. So we said, let's do it. That's
The
all.
real rule book was Leonard, though.
right.
Leonard
Yeah.
must have had a fit when
He
he
did.
saw that.
Oh yeah.
He
We
did.
sat-
Tell us what he said.
Well, I know Ronnie was mad too, because he said we're not running super modifieds, you know. But we put it on more as just a joke as anything, but it did work. And then we built, the next year, this John Rogers, who isn't here, he was laid off, and he went to the library. I sent him to the library, and he spent a day and a half down there and figured out how to design a true wing, you know.
A
And
regular
then-
airfoil.
Yeah, and
Airfoil.
then we built one that was a true airfoil. And then we stood it up enough that it wasn't no longer an airfoil.
I told you we
It
didn't
didn't
know what we
matter.
were doing.
That's what we did.
Well, you know, my recollection is this whole idea of the car being just lifted up, and I mean, nobody did that.
That was just common sense. I don't know why. I can't believe they all didn't do it.
Yeah.
Did anybody? I mean,
Well, you know, our theory was in the rules.
We don't want to work on it.
You have a rule book and it tells you which, the things you can do. But if it doesn't say you can't do it,
right,
You
sure.
can't.
then you can't.
That's the way rules are. If they don't
Yeah.
say that's, there's
So
nothing
we decided-
in there about
and we're
removing the
bored, so
body.
this'll stir up some interest. Let's do this. This will be fun.
Well, it did.
I
see
know.
people come over. I mean, they got to figure out what's going on here.
You could take it off, see, all you needed is, we used a 3/8 drive air wrench with a 9/16 socket, and then we had, the nuts were attached to the frame, or welded, so you just went around and hit 6 of them, 3 on a side, and then lifted it off. We did it.
The body off,
We
yeah.
did it all the time, because it was so easy, you know. It was even easier to clean the car.
Yeah, we take the body right off. It's just, when we put the wing on, we made holes in the roof where it just slide down over the mounts. And then just
Yeah,
take the
we-
4 bolts off that hold the wing on,
we
just
just
take
put
it off,
mounts
and then
and
it's
then
just slide
cut.
right up off. So.
Back to that wing. I'm still stunned that Leonard would let you guys do it, knowing
Yeah.
everybody else
Had to do
would
it.
be
We
on
would be
his
doing it.
butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm stunned that he would allow that.
I know,
Well, we didn't, we just, like I
I
said, it
wish,
was a fluke.
I wish Leonard was still here anyway, but it would be nice to ask him. But I know he wasn't very happy about it. He was not very happy.
But you
about
know what?
it. Well, I know Ronnie wasn't either.
Yeah, sure
But
did
they
create
all
a lot
had
of
him.
interest.
They all went to him.
Yeah,
Oh, everybody had to have one.
Yeah, yeah.
after that.
After you guys had
Ronnie
one,
come
everybody
in
had to
a
have
couple weeks
one.
later with one that was painted black, and he said he didn't want us to see it.
Getting back to the rules, Keith said one time, we never broke the rules, but we sure bent the hell out of them.
Well, I don't think you're alone, but this you were pretty visible about that. I mean, really, when you think about it.
What else could you do to be more visible than that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said it. We just kind of did it for a joke, actually.
Well, we were running awful good, and we were bored.
Yeah, we're bored. We didn't have anything to do that week. Let's make a wing. Oh, okay.
The guy, I'm sorry to keep harping on this wing thing, but that's what fascinates me about what you guys
They
did.
should have stopped it right then.
Yeah.
Well, they could have.
They should have.
And I'm wondering why they did.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Should
don't
have.
know.
But, I mean, it all turned out fine.
Yeah.
We'd have taken it off, and
we didn't
that'd
care.
been the end of it. We didn't care.
We didn't
And he
care.
should have, because actually, the car, I liked them better without it.
Yeah.
They look better.
After you guys came with that wing, everybody had to have one. And there was a lot of experimentation on where to put it and what angle and how to build it. I mean, you saw all kinds of contraptions up there. Did you guys also experiment with front to back,
No.
side to side?
No.
No.
You
We
just
both put it on that day, and it never changed. I think we raised it back up once, and then that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when the next year we just made a regular airfoil and put it on the same mounts and everything.
If you
Same
notice,
place.
the last year, the last 2 years, it had a little more professionally built. So it was professionally built. Aluminum,
Yeah, it was aluminum. It was a regular wing.
yeah.
That with first one was a sandbox.
But no, we
so
did not experiment. No.
It was a joke.
We should have taken it off. I don't know. Why didn't we think of
I
that?
think we did take it off one night, still won.
I'm not sure. We should have taken it off because
From the fan's perspective, the six-cylinder to the V8 was an unbelievable time. We just didn't have any clue what was going to happen when you went to the V8. What thoughts were going through your mind with that transition?
They couldn't beat us. They had to do something.
well, no. They know. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, we just got we dominated there that one year so bad, and there was a lot of six-cylinders. They were parking them. What we found out is they were turning more RPMs, trying to get more power, and they were shaking the crank. They were having a crankshaft problem, and so they got tired of working on them and parked them. I think there was down to about 20 cars, 18, 20 cars in the class. And the track had to do something. I mean, I never did fault them for it. Didn't agree with it.
No, we didn't agree with it, especially
But I
at the
didn't
timing.
fault them.
You know, they were right in the middle of the year, you know.
And they wanted to get that sportsman class. I mean, it went from just being there to a very good class, and now it was back down to where it started.
Ronnie never wanted those 8-cylinder cars either.
You know, he told me that. I didn't.
He wanted to keep the 6 too.
He told me.
So who do you think was behind the push to go to 8
Well,
cylinders?
I have an idea. Track owners probably had as much to do with aim, because see, they knew they could get, if they opened up to the 300 cubic inch V8. There were tons of them around. They could take them out of their pickup truck, and they figured that a lot of these coupes that had been parked, they were still there, and they just put a V8, and it worked because they did get a lot of the car count immediately went up. So we never faulted them for it, even though it cost us. And when they did it, we said we can beat them for 2 weeks. Before we will be able to beat them for 2 weeks.
You did 6 weeks.
No, 6 races.
Yeah.
I think maybe. I'm not sure.
We still
But
won some races.
We won the next 2 weeks, both races.
Can you give
And
me
then
an
that was
exact time frame on when that happened? What the changeover? What year we were at?
60 or 70. Let me see. 1970.
In 1970, you guys won 14 races between the two tracks. Did this change come
we never-
in the next year?
Yeah.
So
It
that would
started,
have been
it started at the end
71?
of 1970, and then when the full, went over into 1970.
Okay.
All right.
But once, we knew once they got them, they had to get obviously a different gear ratio and possibly front springs and.
Told you we didn't know what we were doing.
And we knew that it would take them a couple weeks to get them right, and it did. But we won, and then we didn't. There was only 4 weeks of racing left, something like that. And we never won another race, I don't think, feature.
We were at Erie, we decided the last race in Erie, I think it was a 50 lapper, wasn't it? We left the state line gears in. So
We left the lower gear ratio.
we said, let's give it a try and see what happens. Well, hell, the car was running great. Shit, we were way out front and just pulling away. And the soft plug blew out the side of the engine, we lost all the water.
Just listening to this, though, I mean, aside from the availability of the 8s, but was it also just to kind of bring you back to the pack? Was there any sense that you felt that,
Well, no, I don't think they did it deliberately to hurt us.
yeah,
I mean, I don't, because we had the same option. We could, what we call it the popcorn stand meeting. We had won the race that night, and they come around and they said, after the race, we're gonna have a meeting in the concession stand, 6 of the coupes. So we went, and Leonard, and then they said, the car count's down, and we're just making a poll. We're not saying we're gonna do this, we're just making a poll. We wanna get your opinion. What do you think about opening up the V8, I didn't say anything, and Leonard said, what do you think? I don't think you like it. And I said, no. I said, this is the first year we ever had a spare engine, We never had a spare engine. But I said, I only have one vote. Well, they didn't really take a vote. It was obvious. And we got to Erie Sunday night, and there was a banner up about half the size of that wall. Next Saturday night, V8s are going to be legal. So I think it was pretty well stacked. You know what I mean? I think the meeting was a popcorn meeting. And we expected that. And then the next week they showed up. And they had, I think Ronnie knows guys, they had to, I'm not saying they had them ready because they knew the rules changed, but they had those kind of parts and engines around, I mean, I have an idea, Ronnie could have made a phone call and got 5 engines, somebody would have gave them to run,
It's funny, you guys won 6 consecutive races from July 18th to August 2nd. And then the rest of the year, in the remaining races, Ronnie won them all.
Yeah, well, that was
Except
the
one.
V8. Yeah.
So it's easy to see when that V8
Yeah.
happened just by looking at the results.
Well, they were ready. They were ready for that. We weren't. We wouldn't have any, we didn't have any clues.
Well, we
coming.
couldn't have.
Are you saying that Ronnie and those guys got
Well,
the
they-
word
no.
that it was going to happen? And
No, they just had stuff laying around that they
Oh,
could
I
do.
get what you're
We
saying.
didn't have anything. We didn't have nothing. And
I'm sure they might have talked about it for a month and we didn't know it. We
They were
didn't live there.
complaining, because they were spending so much money on their 6 cylinders to keep them running to make them competitive. Well, we weren't spending any money. Our engines,
Our engine maintenance was 0.
zero. I mean, we rebuild it once a year. About halfway through the year, we'd pull it down, rebuild it, put it back in, and run the rest of the year with it.
That was just like a tune-up, valves.
Rings, put 7
Our
rings in
engine,
rings.
we never, other than building engines, I always, those guys were always complaining they drop out of a race and they spun a bearing. And I used to say to Keith, how come I can't spin a bearing? And we never did.
I've got to interject something that all the engines that he ever built throughout our racing years, we never lost an engine.
The only one that
soft
went bad was with soft plug popped out. That's all this is water.
Well, that was my idea.
Yeah.
I found these high-dollar, high-tech, high-performance soft plugs, where you put them in and you tighten the cap screw and it expands, and, I mean, this is the real deal, And he didn't like them. He said, there's nothing wrong with the old style. So, that's what came out. That's right. That's the truth.
Yeah, well.
Well, you showed him, I'm telling you.
And it
But it was
didn't ruin the
getting in.
engine. It didn't ruin it.
We had them covered that night too, so.
It scuffed the
Bad.
cylinder a little bit, and it didn't ruin the engine.
No.
And we fixed it and never put it back in.
Yeah, in fact, Herbie Layfield's running.
Yeah,
Bought-
Herbie Layfield raced it.
Bought our engine, our
Bought it.
6
All
cylinder
our
stuff, and he raced
6-cylinder
it.
parts, and he told me one time, he says, you guys had them parts trained just right, because I'm still winning with them.
And he won a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Just going through the recap, which Randy talked about on the Sportsman's career. This is 1968 to 1971, and it's just remarkable. 68, 2 wins, 8 seconds, 5 thirds. 69, 8 wins, 11 seconds, 3 thirds. This is on both tracks. 1970, 14 wins, 9 seconds, 5 thirds. 71, 6 wins, 5 seconds, 7 thirds. And just some notes that Randy gave to me, so I'd look really brilliant. Blackmer won 54 races during that same 4-year period. Blackmer won other 7 championships during that era, no one else. 38 times, this is what's to your point, 38 times Jay and Ron finished first and second. I mean, you guys were the toast of it all. Only Blackmer, Schnars, Hewling, and Furlow had more than 30 wins. And only Blackmer and Erickson had more than 5 championships. I mean, during that short period of time, man, you guys were top of the hill. I mean, you and Ronnie were it. I mean, there was the two of you. That was certainly my recollections of it. It was Plyler, Blackmer, Plyler, and then others.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, somebody might sneak in.
Yeah. Well, they had some really good races in
Yeah,
Ronnie.
side by side.
I mean, they'd be going for a lap
after
after a lap, side by side, and
That was
forever.
racing.
That
Yeah.
was racing,
Yeah.
and it was great. I mean, at the end of the race, you didn't care.
It was good racing,
It was
whether
just
we won
fun.
or not.
Yeah, whether you won or not, it was still a good race. So.
Well, I got a picture, I think it's in one of the yearbooks, that shows Jay and Ron and Skip Furlow, all 3 side by side going through the turn. Just never touched a wheel.
No, I never touched. Go race it lap after lap after lap, run wheel to wheel, never touched. So.
Because it is obviously open wheel, and it's amazing to me that you guys never kind of jumped on each other.
You don't dare to.
Never did.
Well, that's what about open wheels. You have to be a better driver. I wish some of the late model drivers had started in the coupes. They might have not leaned on so many people, you know. You can't lean on people with a coupe. You have to stay clean. We had the same front bumper. We built a car and sold it with the same front bumper 4 years later.
Well, then
For an end rear, yeah.
I was thinking you did the rear one over, but I don't know.
No, we might have modified it a little bit. We got a wheel stuck in it, or a bumper stuck in it, and we made something so it wouldn't get in there or something. No.
Jay, 68, 69, great success. All of a sudden, we see you as a player in the late model world. How'd that happen?
The last year that we raced, there was 2 big reasons, and it's both his fault. Every year we built that late model. Well, we only built 2 late models. We ran the first 2 years, and we built the second.
No, I was curious. When you entered the sportsman's class,
Oh.
the stats that I have are 68 really through 71. Then you start into the late models in 1970. How did somebody knock on your door and say, "Hey,
Russ.
was it Russ?"
Oh yeah, see, I was racing the coupe. We were racing the coupe, and Russ had at one time 2 late models, and then he had the one Johnny Whitehead was driving. And Russ liked our coupe. He come around a lot, and he helped us a lot. He got us a set of Buell tires that we didn't have access to. They were a special tire and they were obsolete, but those guys were running them. And he had a brand new set upstairs, and he sold it to us for $50, and we didn't have the money. He said, "You pay us later." So he kind of helped us out.
I don't know if we paid him. Probably.
That's why he's here. Well, you're still the executor of the estate, aren't you? Yeah.
I'm sure we paid him. I know.
we told him to put him on our fast-growing, slow-paying account.
He helped us a lot like that. And he was having a bad run. Our coupe we were running real good. And his late model, Johnny Whitehead, was driving it. They were they couldn't get going, you know. I mean, it was just deteriorating, and didn't know why. And he asked me one time if I'd run the late model, and I said, wouldn't even think about it, you know. Wouldn't even consider it. And then he asked me again. He said, "Well, I told Johnny that if things don't improve, I'm gonna shut it down or put Barry in it, or see if you'd drive it." And I said, I'm not up to that, you know. I never even imagined driving anything like that. But that's how it happened. And then they had another bad weekend, and I got in it. And after I got in it, I realized why Johnny was having a problem. Johnny Whitehead was a stand on the gas guy. I mean, I admired him from when I was 15 years old. And he could go. But Russ, we didn't realize it until later, Russ had a 427, L88 engine in that, which was way overpowered for the tires, at a 10-inch tire. Well, Johnny was still standing on the gas, and then we realized it after I started driving it. He just was spinning all the way around the racetrack. And when you're sideways and you're spinning, you're wrecking. So, they kept wanting, Tom's ass was the mechanic, and he kept wanting to tune it up. And I'd say, if you do anything, pull a spark plug wire out. You can't drive that thing like that. And so, just my different style of not spinning is the only reason the car worked. It wasn't anything wrong with the car, so to speak. It was just overpowered so much. If Russ would have put a 350 in that, Johnny Whitehead would have went right back to winning, I'll bet you. I really do believe that. So that's how I got in the late models. Russ asked me to drive.
And how long did you drive for Russ?
If I'm not mistaken, it was a half a year, whatever year that was. And then that was a big Chevelle, big heavy Chevelle. They all did. They built cars real heavy then, and a lot of metal on the front. And Russ asked me if I'd race the next year, and I said, okay, but I think you better build a new car because it's way too heavy. And I suggested a Chevy 2. We had discussed this. And I suggest the Chevy 2 Nova because they're lighter and it has leaf springs in the rack. And we understand leaf springs from our modified. And he did. Russ built lightweight. I asked him, don't put any boilerplate, nothing. I don't want anything in it. And the car was light, I bet it was 1,500 pounds lighter than a Chevelle. And it worked.
So Russ must have got you in his car at the end of '69,
Yeah, I would say.
and then you, and then
Had to be.
And then 70.
the first late model race you ever won, Jay, was in 1970, and that was in June of 1970. Was the first
Yeah.
late model race.
Well, it was definitely Russ's car.
It was Russ's car, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to pin
Yeah.
it down. So you think you drove for Russ at the tail end of '69,
Could have been.
and then he built
drove
this
for him
new
for 2
car
years.
for you for
I would go
70?
for him 2 years.
Yeah.
A year and a half, you might say, right? Or
No, it was 2 years.
2 full years?
I'm not, I don't know, I can't remember now.
See, I've never.
I think it was a year
Was
and
it?
a half.
What?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
2.5 says Tracy.
Okay, 2.5 then. All right.
Wow.
All right, yeah,
I would have
So you
said
run the coupe 2
1.5
years. You run both cars for 2 years.
right.
You run both cars for 2 years.
By the way, was that hard?
No,
Kinda
it
jump
was
from-
easy.
was it?
Yeah, that's the best thing you can do is race like that, as far as I'm concerned. And I can, these guys that are racing professionally now, Chubb Frank and many, many others, and they run 3-4 nights a week. That's the way to go, I can see that, because of the 2 years in a row there, they had invitationals in the late model class, and we'd never run one, but they were at our track, so we did. And boy, was that nice if you run Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Didn't even take the car out to hot lap it. You know what I mean? You don't, I can see why these guys that race every night or nearly every night, they get better at it.
Right.
That's the way to go.
So when you were running the late model, Jay, the rest of you guys still took care of the Sportsman car,
Yeah.
correct?
Right.
Yeah.
That
Did
was
you
our-
also work on Russ's late model, or did you just stay with the Sportsman?
Yeah, right with the coupe. Yeah.
Okay. What made you guys stop the Sportsman car after the '71 season? You guys were still doing well.
Yeah, I don't know. What, you had to build a garage?
Well, here's the biggest thing. Jim Moffitt died. He was one of the 4 owners.
Yeah.
He died, and we made a deal with his wife that we could stay another year and pay her rent, and we did. But that was, that couldn't continue. It wouldn't have been fair to her either. And we did not have a garage or a tow vehicle between us. So
I'm telling you.
we left it at Erie. We left it at Erie on a Sunday night, and it was gone. We sold it to previously made the arrangements to sell it to a fella. I knew his name. Nice young guy. But anyway, we just
Johnny
plain
something.
didn't have
bought from out, and he was out in Ohio.
Ohio, yeah.
Yeah, he ran a Connie out.
Connie, he ran it at Connie. We just plain didn't have facilities. And,
Didn't even have a place to put it.
no, we didn't have a garage
Just
or a
to,
tow vehicle.
just to kind of wrap up that sportsman part of your world, did you make any money?
Yep.
Did you?
We,
Not a lot.
when we started it, we put in $200 apiece.
This is
And,
no lie. I mean, they think that we had this big high dollar car.
$200. Not all at once.
Four of us.
Not
went.
all at once. And we made him the treasurer. And, which really wasn't fair because he carried the weight so much on the engine and everything, but he was it. And to this day, I never saw a paper. You know what I mean?
So,
That house in Florida?
Yeah. That's why we didn't make any money. That's the truth.
Yeah.
To this day, nobody ever asked to see the books. Nobody ever asked. We'd say, how are you doing? He'd say, well, we can afford this or we can afford that. And he paid for everything out of it. And we never put,
Had a
One-
file cabinet drawer. And you
I
could
never
bring
saw
the
that
money
either.
home and throw it in the file.
I never saw the cashier.
I'm lousy at bookkeeping. I was terrible. It's like, you know.
Well, you know,
had
we
money.
should have made Jim
It paid
off.
our gas, it paid all our
Paid
way
everything.
in, paid all of our expenses.
We never took $1, am I correct? We never took $1 out of our pocket from the day.
At the end of the year, one year, we had some extra money. I think we gave each other a little bit, not very much. Maybe we went to dinner or something. Because the
But I
next
mean,
year,
it
you had to
never,
put it all
it
back
paid
in.
its way,
Yeah.
but it didn't make any,
Yeah,
you know what I
make any
mean?
money, no.
We, I didn't get paid for driving, he didn't get paid for work on it, but we never took $1 out of our pocket after the first night of racing.
Yeah, at the end of the year, the first year, we made enough, we could get our $200 back. When we started out, we put in $200 apiece whenever we could get it together.
Yeah,
And
$10 at a time.
And we still needed tires and wheels, and we ended up, the guy spotted us for another $200.
Well, actually,
We owed
Gary
$200.
was friends with the people that owned Chamberlain Recap.
Yeah,
Was
my cousin ran the recap.
Okay, so he went down and he loaned them. We didn't give them back, but we paid for them. 4 white oval recaps.
But he capped them up in natural rubber. And,
52
they were a
hardness, yeah.
little softer than the normal recaps. And
They worked pretty good.
Well,
They weren't great, but they were
No,
fair.
but
There
that, I
wasn't
mean,
anything
we had to
like
pay
it.
that
We
off
didn't
after
know
we
anything.
started,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
Then
no,
it paid its own way. Now, Kenny Eddy's bought the gas. He had a Eddy's Golf Station. He was good. He bought the gas for the car and the tow truck, and that probably would have made the difference whether we made it or break it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, we never got any money from any sponsors.
No, we never got
a
that
penny.
car. That coupe had not $1 bill sponsored.
No one got gas.
Kenny bought the gas, and M&M gave us
Kendall
the
gave
old
us-
Chrysler product frame, and and we bought the body.
Canwell Johnson donated paint.
Did they really?
Yeah.
DuPont.
I
They had
forgot it.
Camel Johnson paint and
I'm looking at this car here, and there's a service garage. These are the guys that gave you the gas, something Bradford, Pennsylvania. I want to say
Eddie's
Eddie's Golf.
Eddie's
Eddie's
Golf.
Service, yeah,
Yeah.
Eddie's Service. Yeah, so that's what you're talking about.
That's the guy who gave us the gas.
Yeah, he's still a friend, and boy, it probably made the difference.
Yeah, Kendall gave us oil.
Yeah, Kendall, anybody that raced, if you asked, they'd give you up to 10 cases
10
a year.
cases a year.
And-
I don't think we even used that.
No.
We didn't use that much.
And that was good oil. It was Kendall GT1 racing oil.
That was great. Yeah.
We never had a bearing problem.
They'd always want a sample.
Yeah, we'd take samples to them occasionally, like after a rebuild especially, the mid-season. We'd take a sample down, they'd run it through the test. It was quite an expensive test, but they did it free. And then they would get, in fact, I have a sheet on it.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's
they-
interesting. So they sort of use that as a testing ground. I mean,
Sort of.
that's how they justified it. They-
And
Yeah.
we were agreed to put a GT1 sticker on the car.
Yeah.
And we
There
did.
was no stickers on the car. We made a deal. If you don't give us something, you're not getting anything on it.
We
Nothing
did.
goes on the car.
Well, that's good.
So there was not many stickers, GT1 and Eddie's Golf. Now Fairway was on the first car, but we just did that because they gave us that used engine.
That old worn-out engine, used engine that they were going to throw away, so we took that. That
Now,
was
wait a
our
minute, they
engine.
gave us a transmission.
And a transmission that somebody brought in to get rebuilt, and they never paid for it, and it was sitting upstairs, and they said, I think we can use that transmission, can we have that too? And they said, yeah, take it,
That's
it's been
how
up there for
so
like
they
3
gave
years
us a
or
used
something.
transmission and a short block.
But I'm listening to this. Isn't that, aren't you marvel the fact that you
It's
really
scary that we got away with it.
you came from every place possible, and with just think all the success you had.
Yeah.
Kind of scary is right. I don't know.
Well-
We were just damn lucky.
Keith and I talked about this the other day when I took the DVD up to him. And that's the first we talked racing in 20 years. Bill.
Yeah.
And we both agreed that we were luckier than we're good, because if anything would have happened, like at the beginning of our Sportsman, like if we'd have lost an engine or something like that,
We'd have
we'd have
done.
sold it.
We'd been done.
We'd have sold the
We couldn't
car right there
afford
for $100 or $500 or whatever and been done.
We couldn't afford
Because
it.
there was no money to operate on.
We had to be very conservative every time we built an engine. It was conservative. We had-
Well, yeah. How'd you like to been the driver? This guy, this guy's the engine man, and he said, "I'm not building," and he meant it. He said, "I'm not putting a lot of horsepower and a lot of compression because I don't want to work on it all the time." He said, "That engine is to get you to the next turn. You pass the guys in the turns."
Yeah.
And he's
I said-
serious.
I was serious. I said, if you watch the race, and nobody passes anybody down the straightaway unless it's really bad. All the passing is done in the turns. And I says, we'll build an engine just to keep up with everybody going down
Yeah.
the straightaway. And when we get to the
And that's the
turn,
truth.
it's up
That's
to
the way
you.
we operate. And there were, although that Ford,
We worked a lot on
that
chassis.
Ford did have, it was pretty adequate on horsepower. But there were guys that had more.
Yeah.
Skip had some monster motors
Oh,
in
boy,
that.
there was a lot of horsepower
In that
there.
coupe. And Dick Martin, or Dick's
boy,
uncle,
that
Rod,
boss.
boy,
That boss
he must have been, he was quite a innovator.
I'll say.
He was a machinist. He was very
And he had some engines that pulled us awful bad down the straights.
Then, like you said, to get to the corner, and it's a whole new experience every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, as Jim Moffitt used to say that. He said, a lot of these drivers, he said they've been driving for 20 years, and every time they get to a turn, it's a whole new experience. I thought that was pretty cute.
Well, the bad thing about when we started with that Ford 306 was it was a relatively new engine.
Couldn't
We
buy
had a
anything.
heck of a time finding parts.
Make
Jan's
everything.
built us a set of pistons. Crane ground us a cam. And
You couldn't buy
buy an
anything
intake or anything for
Now,
it.
we had to build the intake manifold, and exhaust manifold. There was nobody made. Nothing. Zero.
Yeah. Tell them what it was
Built
made
it
out
out of a conduit, it's an electrical conduit. They run wires in from substations and that. And I took it, went in on a Saturday and cut and whacked and made all these pieces up. And Keith wanted 3 2-barrel carburetors. Now, Ronnie and those guys all ran 4 barrels, but they bought professionally built aluminum
You couldn't buy
manifolds.
it.
We couldn't buy them. So
Well,
it didn't matter. We didn't have a choice.
That
And he-
292 Chevy was old.
Yeah.
at that
Well, then it was being raced all over the country. That 292 Chevy was being raced successfully all over the country. And so he wanted 3 carburetors. It just made sense to space out the 3 2s would be better than a 4 barrel, and definitely couldn't have 2 4 barrels. So I whittled this manifold out, and then you and
Chuck.
Chuck McAndrews welded it up,
Yeah.
and it worked naturally. You had an awful time getting it to fit because
Rolled it to a big-
it was that long,
Yeah.
and it worked. But
All one piece.
Yeah.
yeah, I took it in on a press and we got it straightened out, and we put the car. Keith wanted 2-barrel carburetors like they were on little 265 Chevys.
Yeah, Rochester.
280 Rochester, little 2 barrels. They weren't very big. He wanted 3 of them, so I went down to M&M, the salvage yard. They did give us all the like the frame and that stuff, you know. And I found 4 carburetors, and some of them had mud in them, you know. They weren't on engines, and they had broken parts on them, you know. And I took them and gave them to him, and he took them apart and bought kits for them to rebuild them and scrounge parts off to get 3 good ones. And they weren't even the same models.
No, they
were
weren't the same number.
I mean, they weren't
Three
all
different ones.
A65s or whatever the numbers were. They were
Whatever we could find.
whatever they were. And then we put them on. I built the linkage in that. Well, we put the carburetors on wrong way relative to the way they were designed. If you any carburetor, generally the throttle shaft runs crossways to the frame, okay? And the floats and everything are designed accordingly. Well, we wanted them the other way so that the carburetor
So they'd fit.
all be in a line. Well, when we got there, I forgot or never heard the story, but these guys said Squirt
yeah.
come over and said them carburetors won't work.
They'll never work sitting
They're
there like
wrong- They're
that.
pointed the wrong direction, they're gonna dump
They're thinking,
fuel in the
"Oh,
turns,
crap."
I'm glad I didn't know it.
He also, one of them guys said that, oh, a Ford, oh, they blow up all the time.
Yeah, I do
They're
remember
no
that.
good.
I
They're
didn't
no
even wanna
good. They
go
blow
out-
up all the time. It's like, oh, great.
I didn't even want to that, because we
There's
didn't
a
know
lot
it.
of them.
Which begs the question, why did you build this Ford engine other than
Keith, for a
it,
Ford mechanic.
it was given to you?
Yeah.
I mean, why didn't you build a 292 Chevy like the rest of the
He
racing
said it was a
world?
better engine.
It was a better engine.
Yeah, had seven
Better
main
design.
bearings.
Yeah, it was 7 main. Well, the Chevy should do it too, but it
They
was just
did,
a better engine. It was
And
d-
the intake and exhaust were all separate. There
yeah,
was
see,
no-
there's
It's a
a
12
Siamese-
quart head, see,
Yeah.
and the Chevy Siamese their exhaust.
They
And,
only had four mains.
I mean,
I said it was a
you're
great- it was
not
a
a
better
mechanic, but I could set those cylinder heads out there and show you the difference, and you'd say, oh, it's better. It's
It
that
was a better
simple.
engine, I thought.
Yeah.
We did run Chevy valves in it, though.
Yeah, we did put Chevy valves in it, so.
But he was a Ford
What a
mechanic.
mongrel.
He said that, he said, I think Ford's a better engine, and as soon as you look at it, I think it was.
But then when you get there and everybody says, oh, them things are
But yeah,
crap.
they said they blow up. I mean,
We looked
I
at each
don't,
other, it's
I
like,
don't know how we
oh,
could get
great.
through the night,
We buried a lot of them.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it was scary when they told us, oh, they've had a lot of Fords up there, they all blow up. I'm not so sure, but Russ Thompson had a Ford in a modified at one time.
He did. Who? Yeah.
Did he have a Ford sec?
Yeah, they had a little of everything, but yeah.
Yeah,
Barry-
see,
Barry ran a Ford 6.
I
yeah.
think so, yeah. I guess everybody said that they had a timing gear problem, but we didn't.
Yeah.
But, we didn't have any engine problems, so.
We got to looking at the valves, and it needed a little bit bigger valve, so we get the book out and look at all the specs.
Which I don't think a lot of those guys did, and I don't know why, because it wasn't that expensive. I think they charged us, what, $50?
50 bucks,
or something?
yeah. And we said, it's got to stay together, because if it goes, we're done. If it don't stay together.
Yeah,
we're
we
done.
just balanced it for, to make it last longer,
Longevity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it wasn't high dollar, I'll tell you that.
Let's go to that late model now. So you're getting Russ's car in 70 and 71. And in 71, you turned out to be the champion at Stateline Erie's and the circuit in Russ's car.
I didn't know that.
Yep, Stateline Erie's and the circuit in 1971. In 1972, you aren't racing anywhere.
Yeah, building a garage.
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
What happened?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. That was the second year for that Chevy too. And Russ came to me at the end of the year and he said, I had a couple good years with you. I had a lot of good years over the years, but I had some lean ones. And now the last couple of years have been really good with you. And he said, I actually, got a little bit of money saved and I think that's time for me to get out. And he said, why don't you just take my complete racing operation, 2 motors, the car, trailer, tires, and everything, just take it to Bradford. And he said, you can pay me next year as you win. Now, that's pretty remarkable that a guy would do that. And I said, I don't have a garage. I literally do not have a garage. And we talked about it, and we felt that that type of car was running out of time. Era was running out, the guys were building, some were building their own cars on jigs. And these were the old cars that had unibody. That Chevy 2 was a unibody. And then they were starting to buy manufactured cars too. And we felt that it was coming to the time where these cars weren't going to work anymore. And we were right. So I refused them, which was quite a generous offer. And then that next year I built a garage on my house. And then there again, because of Russ Thompson, he put a deal together with Archie Nichols, who owned Twin Auto. And Archie really liked our Ford coupe because he was a Ford fanatic. Mm-hmm. He was a guy that he'd rather walk than ride in a Chevy. And he liked our coupe so well that he and Russ talked, unbeknownst to us. And Archie said he would sponsor us if we wanted to build a late model in Bradford, which was unheard of for somebody in Frewsburg to give somebody in Bradford money to buy and nobody else would build a Ford because they're too tough to work with. Parts available. But that's how that came about. Russ put that together, and Archie sponsored the first late model. Now, we weren't quite as poor. We actually had a good hammer. And I built quite a nice garage, you know what I mean? It was comfortable. I built a late model. It was, at the time, it was adequate. We were no longer really poor boys. I built a frame jig, I remember that.
Yeah,
we built that.
Made
Built a
everything,
jig.
made everything.
We built a jig and then built the chassis off of the jig for our first late model. And we were over our heads in that, too. And we really were.
So it just, you guys continued, I mean, once Sportsman's was sold off and a guy from Conneaut basically buys that, and now your group is still together, right? I mean,
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys, when I raced for, after sold the coupe, you were going to some races.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I probably didn't miss any.
No, Bill didn't.
Bill, you're-
In fact, at the last year, Bill and I were the only ones that went to Erie. He drove the truck and I rode with him. Our wives got tired of going. They didn't complain, they just got tired of it. We get to Erie and somebody said, "Where's the crew?" And Bill say, "This is the big and the little of it." That's all there was.
You do your work at home, you don't do it at the racetrack.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the work at home.
Yeah, we never worked on it.
Yeah. You
Never
never
worked
worked
on cars.
never worked in a car and racetrack.
So you started driving for Archie. Archie and Russ. It was a combination.
Well, yeah, Russ was just the go-to guy. He just talked to Archie and come back to me, and he said, "Hey, Archie, sponsor you guys for a race car." And I said, "Well, I'll have a garage, but I don't have any money." And as it turned out, at that time, about the only thing you got that was tin and the front clip, and then we built everything else.
I'm trying to get to Jay. Who owned that car?
I owned it.
Oh, you
Yeah, I
owned
owned it. Yeah, Archie never owned it.
Oh, that's what I want to know.
Yeah. Everything there belonged to me, but no, without Archie starting me out, I would never. And the funny part of it is, I figured it out later, years later. I don't think it cost Archie more than $4,000 cash
Yeah, 'cause-
to do that.
Yeah.
I remember we were trying to find an engine, and Keith knew exactly what he wanted, a 351, but it had to be a certain number because it had better crank and better connecting rods in. And I found one, and the guy had raced it at Bradford Speedway one year, so we bought it. I bought it. I went to credit union and borrowed the money to buy it. And as it turned out, he'd cooked it. Remember that?
Yeah.
He didn't tell us that. And then he built that ex-Bradford Speedway 351 Cleveland into that car that we showed up with there. And we didn't have a spare for that for 2 years. A little light on spare parts.
A little light on cash.
That's what they call a wing and a prayer. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I love the way you reference it. I made a note of that. Fast-growing, slow-paying account.
That's it.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
love it.
I never heard that.
Me neither. I obviously made a note of this. I would
You've never
use
been to
this.
Bradford then, have you? I was in business 26 years. I can tell you.
Oh, that's spectacular.
So then you owned your own late model from 73, 4, 5, and 6.
That's correct.
And you guys were all back in the game
Right.
with Jay
Right.
in those late model
That's
years.
correct.
Right.
Okay. And then you stopped after 76. What happened?
There's no innovation left.
Well,
You get on the phone, you want to race, you order all your parts, when they
What
come in, you
number
put
do
it
you want?
together.
Yeah.
We used to invent stuff.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why we quit, why it ended in 76, was that the year?
76.
I didn't know we started in 68 till he told me the other day. I just never kept track of this stuff. I talk about this more today than I have in the last 20, 30 years put together. It's kind of interesting, but I just never did. Why we quit racing? Keith had 2 little girls, and every year when we started the late model, every year he'd say, "Now next year I'm not going to do as much. I won't be going to Erie, but I'll go to Stateline." And every year he'd tell me what he was going to do less, and he did less. And that hurt. And I knew the next year he wasn't going to be there at all. We didn't talk about it, but I knew he wasn't going to be there at all. And that car was 2 years old, and we felt that it was time for a new car. So we'd be building a new car without Keith, and that wasn't gonna fly. So it was just time to get out.
I had 2 little girls that were growing up, and
Yeah, he
I
was
wanted to be a dad.
almost raising them by himself, skiing and everything, you know. And so that, and then the last year that we ran that late model, we had to come up with a 400 cubic inch engine. It was our first chance at a real performance engine, and it wasn't. And the last year, you'll see, we didn't win very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, the funny part is, we put a bigger carburetor on at the last race, and it lit it right up. If we'd have done that sooner. But he wasn't there to see it, you know, and we kept, well, I have enough power. He said, "Yeah, it should have." Well, you went the last race, and you said, "Boy, you need more power." He said, "We've been telling you that all year." And that's the truth of the matter. That last year, and, you know, all we had to do was put the other one back in.
Yeah.
I don't know why you and I didn't do that. I mean, he would have helped us.
Yeah.
We should have put the old 351 in.
There it goes again, you know, you can't buy anything. You can buy stuff. You couldn't buy what we wanted.
No.
You know, what we wanted, we had to make. And we built up a 400 block, which is a lot heavier than the 351. We wanted
There was a
more cubic
350
inches.
Windsor block, and we
No, it
put
was a
Cleveland.
400 Michigan block.
Yeah, it was a 400 Michigan block.
Yeah.
we used.
We put Cleveland heads on it, and then nobody made a manifold, so we had to take a
Make
351 manifold and make spacer plates. It was quite involved. And if we'd have put, all it needed is more cam and more carburation. It probably wouldn't have stayed together, but
We
it
don't
would have
know.
went good.
I mean,
Cast
it
iron
would-
crank and
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a racing. It wasn't really a racing engine. We just got a bigger engine. We wanted.
It was just a
engine.
bigger engine, but it wasn't racing.
Yeah.
What you said had Grandma Brown rods in it.
Yeah, Grandma Brown rods. It was pretty bad. It's stuff that the Grandma Brown uses to go to the grocery store.
So if we would
I
have
don't think we
cranked
can
it,
twist it
if
too
we would
high.
have cranked it, it probably wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
But we had the option of a perfectly good 351 sitting there to put back in, and I don't know why we didn't do it. So it was just a combination. We didn't, I mean, it was no problem. We didn't quit on bad terms or anything. It was just time.
that 351 was the one you won all the invitations
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, those guys couldn't believe it was a 351. They just kept coming and saying, shaking their heads. I didn't tell you that's not a 351. I said, hey, I'm telling you, it's stock-born stroke.
Yeah.
Couldn't be. They didn't believe it.
You know, we talked to Ronnie a couple of times, and he was talking about certain races where, in fact, the sportsmen and the late models would actually race against each other. Were you ever involved in a race like that?
No.
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 He did, you're right, though. I wasn't there. They had a big race at N.Y. Speedway, or Ben White. I never was there. And he put a V8 in a coupe and went over there and won.
That's where Warren was.
Yeah, Jim Moffitt was there, I wasn't. But he did that.
Yeah.
No, we didn't, we weren't in a position to gamble and do anything like
That's
that.
dangerous.
Well,
They had, I think what Greg's after are these 150 lap team races
Yeah, we were
that
in-
they had in
56.
in 75
Really?
and 76.
I don't remember.
The team race in 75 was won by Bobby and Billy Schnars, Bobby in the late model and Billy in the coupe. And in 76, the 150 lap team race was won by Freddie Knapp and Skip Furlow. A late model teamed up with a coupe.
They were
So
both
you
on the
guys
same-
must not participated because you were still racing in 75 and
Yeah.
76.
Yeah, we would have had a late model. We wouldn't have had a
You would, so
We
you
had
would
the
have
late-
been teamed up
Yeah.
with somebody with a coupe.
That'd be interesting, I don't remember.
Well,
Honest to
you've
God.
given me a job to find out
Yeah.
who you were teamed up with.
Yeah.
If we were in it, yeah.
Well, hey, oh God, it's right here. You finished third in 1976.
Our
Your
ages-
teammate was Johnny Whitehead.
Okay. CRS. You know what CRS is, don't you? Can't remember.
shit.
Can't remember too
We
much.
all raise our hand to that one.
Get this, the year before, in 1975, you also finished third, and your teammate was Johnny Whitehead.
Yeah.
Unless they didn't run at the same time. Were they both on the track at the same time?
No, not both on the track. One of, say if you were on the track, Johnny would be sitting in the infield, and then when you came into the
God, I
infield,
don't
then
remember.
Johnny would go out.
Of course, I wasn't going that much back then.
He as I said, he was coming back every year.
Obviously, very memorable.
Yeah.
You finished third both years, and you don't even know.
Well, that's why we don't remember, had we won it, we'd remember.
I'll tell you the one we do remember is those invitationals that they pulled in the 4th of July.
How would that work? I mean, invitation by definition, you invite that, you're invited, but how does that work? How do they set that up?
What they did is called an open invitation. And what that meant
Run what you
was
want.
you run what you brung. In other words, Stateline Erie had a very rigid set of rules back then. And they were much more rigid than most tracks. And our cars were heavier because of that. And it didn't make any difference as long as you stayed at Stateline and Erie. But we weren't not competitive when we went to other tracks. Their cars were lighter. Bigger tires and
bigger
everything.
engines, bigger everything.
Well, they asked one night, they had a meeting, and they asked if we would participate, we being other drivers, myself, if they had an open invitational. Well, a lot of the guys said, well, yeah, but you have to restrict their tires. Well, then it's no longer an open invitational. And these guys aren't going to come from Ohio or West Virginia or Pennsylvania and buy tires. They want to run what they have. And we said, well, yeah, I mean, we'll race, you know. So they did. They had them, and they came in. We knew who they were, and they come in with bigger tires and bigger engines
A little
and
more
lighter
cars.
cars. No, we had to have chrome bumpers, the original chrome bumper.
Right.
They had, you know, just tubing. And we didn't have it. We didn't figure we stood a chance, but we said if we could beat the locals, then we felt that we had won the race.
We learned something.
We learned something.
We learned something.
And I remember we had a little bit of money in the late model. I was I kept care of the. I didn't trust Keith.
Yeah, you saw how well he did on that.
Yeah, once it was my
his
car.
money. His money.
I took care of the book. But anyway, we had money and a little bit of money, and I said, well, do you think we ought to buy bigger tires and wheels to be able to run with these guys? And he said, I think it'd be a mistake because first of all, you can't bolt bigger tires and wheels on and go out there and have the car work just the way it ought to. And it's one night at Stateline and one at Erie. And by the time we figure it out, it'll be too late. So let's run what we have. And just run it like it's a 100-lap race and they aren't there. Just pretend they're not there. So we did. And the first night at Stateline, we were third. Third, Bob Waring won it, and Herb Scott,
Tom Wimmer won it.
and Herb Scott
Herb
was
Scott
second.
was second, and you were third.
Yeah.
And
we
ran
were-
over Waring's hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the night you ran over Waring's hood, he went in the corner and stopped, and you ran over his hood.
Yeah. Well, you know, we were happy because we did beat the locals, and we did get beat by two of the travelers, so to speak. But we were very happy, and we went to Erie the next night and we won it. That was quite pretty rewarding, you know.
You won it. Bob Wearing was second, and Jim
Yeah.
Scott was third.
Yeah.
He beat on Waring for
Yeah, he
80
wouldn't move
laps. Wouldn't move over. Go down
Oh,
there and
yeah.
stop. And, you know, and he's ready. He's trying to float in and come out, you know.
I pounded on the back bumper for a long
Long
time.
time.
And I thought maybe I moved him, but he had a bad tire. He said, according to somebody said that he had a bad tire. But they were taking, what we were told, they told us, they taken 454s and they were getting cranks that were for outboard, the 302 big block Chevys. They were getting
502s, yeah.
502s,
502s,
yeah. That's what they were running 502 cranks and them 427 Chevys. So they had a lot of power.
Big tires. Huge,
Big humpers.
huge tires.
But they didn't work on brakes like we did. See, we built our own brakes. And I could run a 100-lap race. The last lap was actually faster than the beginning. It got faster. And my brakes never, I had 100% brakes at the end of a race. And they were running their brakes off. They were trying to run in there like that.
Was that your biggest win?
No, the next year.
The next year, they had 100-lap races again at both tracks, and Jay won both of them the next year in '74.
Yeah, that was
huge.
I figure that was an accomplishment because of the
3 out of
competition
4.
that came.
Not bad.
3 out of
come
4
out-
of those
they
big
came from out of
invitationals
the
he
area,
won.
you know.
And that was pretty big money then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah. I
What did we
forget,
get?
we made $3,000.
Yeah.
Well, we paid $1,500 to win and then lap money.
Yeah, and then
I
it
think we
was-
made $4,500. And you know, at that time, the engine, we didn't have that much money in our engine.
Yeah. And
Oh, well, we
It
had,
was a bonus if you figured, if you were the high point.
That's
in the
right.
2 tracks, they paid you another
Yeah.
$1,000 on
Wow.
top. So we got that both years.
yeah, and you gotta remember, our engines, you know, because of the fact that the only thing we hired done was the machine work. Board, in fact, I don't think we bored only a couple.
One, I think, because it was just,
One,
we
yeah.
just had to bore it.
But anyway, so our engine, we didn't have $5,000 in the engine, and you made that much in 1 week, you know.
What did we
2
buy?
days.
It was an 11-inch tire rule, and we bought, what, 12-inch recaps?
I did have, we didn't cheat, we just didn't tell the locals. For that race,
No, we have a different term in my business. It's called taking liberty with the truth.
well, they didn't have a tire limit. They had 14s, and everything
14,
ours
15
was, they call them 1050s, but they were about 11 inches is what they were. Well, I got hooked up with a Hoosier tire dealer in New York. I drive up there.
Yep.
Well,
Hugh Dara.
Hugh Dara. Bill and I used to go up.
Because nobody would deal with him, so nobody would know what we were buying.
Yeah, I was dealing with Scott and Turner, and they were competitors. So I made a deal with him, and I took casings up to him, and then he had 12-inch caps put on them the second year. So we actually had 12-inch. We had an advantage over the locals, but 12 didn't equal 14. So yeah.
Then after the race was over, we could still use the tires, so we just trimmed them off. And
Yeah, we
cut 'em back down.
cut the edges off them, and I could use them if we didn't use them or
At an angle.
Is that right? Is that what happened?
See, they're 11 here, but as they wear down, they just happen to get white.
Oh, that's good, Bill.
But we had a disadvantage because we were buying our tires from our competitors.
So they knew what we were running.
They knew, I mean, you know, and not only that, but they get
They had
tires in
first
from the
choice.
recapper out in Hoosier, you know, and they'd
Sorts
call us when they were in. Well, by the time we got there, they were pretty well picked over.
They got all the choices.
Recaps are not all the same. A new tire is a new tire. Recap,
We used
different
to have a
casings. and-
Durometer,
Yeah.
measure the hardness with it.
So we had a disadvantage there, but then we got around that by having our tires capped through Hugh Dara.
You
We
had,
found some good casings that would have, what we really wanted.
They liked, our competitors liked the hard casing. I think some of them liked them because they came from NASCAR land. They were them old, hard, stiff. You could run them with 10 pounds of air. And we hated them. We didn't want any part of them. We went after H&H Racemaster and another one, Wrinkle Walls.
Yeah, that's.
We called them Wrinkle Walls. They were a drag tire. And then we had them capped. And boy, were they good, you know. We liked them.
So they had a softer sidewall
Oh,
on
just
it,
almost as soft as today.
so you can get some side bite
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
car.
And we used to, the late models sit there in the left rear, be all wrinkled up, look half flat. And people would come by and say, hey, you got a flat tire. Whoever wasn't there, we'd say, told that Gary that tire was bad, he had to patch it, you know? Or if it was Bill or Keith, you know? And we always ran those wrinkle walls, and they get a footprint, you know, as today. What it was is it was a tire very similar to what you're racing today.
Yeah, we wanted tires like they have today. We knew what we wanted, but you couldn't
They
buy
make
them.
'em.
You couldn't buy them. So we
Also
did the
had
best we
about
could.
4 tire gauges too. Somebody say, what kind of pressure you guys are running out here?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, you know, you guys had so much success. Did you, among the various teams, did you guys talk at all?
A little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So
We
maybe-
talked, but we didn't compare notes.
Okay.
No, not like today. Today, I think they share everything.
The coupe, this is no lie, the guys would come over with a clipboard and paper and a ruler
And
and measure our car and
They'd
write
ask
everything
us.
down.
They'd ask us.
You know, so we did.
These are the competitors.
Yeah. They'd
They'd
measure,
measure
and
our
crawl
car.
under it and measure.
Measure and write everything down.
And you
everything.
didn't mind?
No,
No, because you can't copy.
you can't.
Some
I
people
mean, if
can't
you got a
copy.
copy, you're not going to win anyway.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
that one year we were winning all the time, Ronnie and Skip built Plymouth frames
Yeah.
like we had with the torsion bars, and they couldn't make them work.
Yeah.
They went back to the old one.
In the middle of the year, they cut the clip and changed it, and didn't make it work, and cut it off and went back. Yeah.
This is,
You know that I mean, it was true. We saw it, but you can check that out.
They didn't notice the 6-inch offset to the left either.
Yeah.
We did a lot of things that nobody noticed. You know. We didn't say, you can't.
When you ask about working together with other teams, you got to remember we were outcasts because of where we came from. And these guys up there, they worked together, lived together. They had ATVs, snowmobiles, and they all knew each other. And they were friends off the track.
And they've been racing for years, and they grew up around racing.
Well, they started 12 years before we got there. And
I told you we didn't know anything.
they compared notes. I know they did. They said they did. They'd go down and work on cars and that. We didn't have that. We were on our own. And the good news and bad news, the good news is when you did get something at work, nobody else knew it. Wasn't anybody there to talk to, you know. So we stayed by ourselves deliberately. But it was pretty easy to do because we weren't friends. Now, we weren't enemies. We didn't fight.
The crowd didn't crowd around us either, because we were out of the area.
Yeah.
And most of the people in the stands wanted to see the locals, their
Yeah.
locals.
We got a fan base eventually, but for a long time there, we didn't have any people coming around, you know, which was okay. When the race was over, we just hooked up and left. Because we had to drive, you know.
Was there any anti-Jay Plyler? I mean, you guys had successes for the short period of time you drove. Incredible successes. Were there? Did you get a sense of that at all?
If you start winning too much, you're gonna get the booze.
Well, yeah, we got booze, but as far as in the pits, you know, I never felt
think
we
so.
were,
No, not at all.
I don't feel that maybe we weren't smart enough to know it.
The only problem we had originally was Johnny. Johnny used to go over and agitate Ronnie and
Oh, yeah, this little
Skip
John
and
Rogers
them
that
guys.
isn't here.
How would he do it?
He would just, he was with us, and then he'd just go over and just
He's a
start,
character.
try to stir up trouble. You know?
Yeah.
I don't even know what he did. But
No, but I mean,
Ronnie
had a particular name for him.
well, you know, I talked about him here. I
That
told
little-
you we ran into him. He still don't like him.
Oh, I could see where Ronnie would carry a grudge. Yeah.
Ronnie still don't like him. Said, no, bring him around.
Jay, after you quit racing, and you weren't involved in the sport for about 6 years, and then Bill Southwell called you. Tell me about that.
I was at a camp, open fishing season, whatever it was, some walleye. I don't know what it was, but anyway. And I finally got home after a couple of days there, and my wife said that Bill Southwell had been driving her nuts, calling. I said, who's Bill Southwell? She said, you know, it's that little guy that traveled with Schnarr. Oh, yeah. I didn't know him by name at the time. So I said, well, I'm not calling. She said, well, he wants you to drive his car. I said, I'm not calling him. I said, Christ, he wouldn't even speak to me when we were racing. You know, Bill was a little bit on the rough side to get along with. Well, he finally called me and got a hold of me. And his driver, Lars Eulings, had got busted up. And he wanted to run for 6 weeks. He said, just drive it for 6 weeks at Stateline in Erie. He said they'd been running the big tracks down south, and the big tires and the big engine and everything. And he said, I don't want to go. He said, we haven't been doing any good anyway. And I just soon run Stateline in Erie for 6 weeks while Lars heals. And he said, I figure that you won't tear the car up. And he said, rather than get a young guy. I said, boy, I did not want to. I didn't, but, you know. And I said, well, come up with the understanding that if I hot lap it and I don't like it, I'm done. No contract. And the same with you. Okay, so that's how that happened. I went up and I ran it, and I couldn't believe that's the first factory-built car. It was a Rayburn car with a factory-built engine. Well, you know, I think we had the best of the homemade stuff. Well, this is another level, you know. Rack and pinion steering, and we never had that. And it was easy to drive. I found out why some of those guys that didn't used to race very well got better, because they didn't have good cars. When the homemade cars, they weren't as good as mine. Now they had good cars. And it was easy to drive. It was easier than these homemade cars.
And you won a race for Bill.
Yeah, I think.
One and only he won that year, Bill Southwell.
Yes.
They didn't win any other one.
Right.
Then I think yeah, I won one, but the one that was the best race was the last one. I came from last to second.
Right.
And I had 44 Hess. Well, I call him a kid then. Now he's got a kid. That's racing. Dave Hess, Jr. I caught him at the end, but he was out of tires and I wasn't. And that was the end. Then Bill won. He fired Lars. He called me. He said, "Well, I fired Lars." He said, "You got the job." And I said, "Oh no, that wasn't part of the deal." I said 6 weeks and that's it.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel right because I like Lars, and I quit him.
Yeah.
And he had a half a dozen drivers in there. He even tried driving it.
He did.
Oh,
He cut a car in half. He cut a brand new Rayburn in half down at Pittsburgh on a light pole.
Yeah, he had a bunch of guys.
Oh,
he
yeah.
had
Dave-
Craig Briggs was in it.
Craig did probably as
I
good
think
as...
Gerdak was in
Yeah.
it. Chubb was in it.
I got Chubb that ride.
Oh, okay.
Because Bill was debating on who to get. And I said, "You ought to try Chubb." Oh, he couldn't drive a late model. He said, "He's got that semi-late." And I said, "He'd go right out there the first lap and be as fast as anybody on it." Oh, Bill, And so he called me on a Saturday morning. He said, "You coming up?" And I said, "No, I'm not coming up." Because I figured if he went up, see, he'd say, "I don't have a driver, so you printer have to drive it." And I said, "Who's going to drive it?" And he said, "I talked to Chubb." And I said, "Okay, I'll come up." So I went up. And I felt, Chubb was his own man then, He didn't intimidate him. But he's getting in the car to go out for the heat race. And I said, "This got more power than anything you ever drove. I had more power than anything I ever drove." And I said, "Just don't get too excited about standing on it." And he said, "No, I won't." Well, if you know Bill Southwell, he's the opposite. He said, run her wide open." Oh, boy. But Chubb went out, and I think he won the race, and then I think he was third in the feature, and they did pretty good together.
That year that you drove Bill's car for just that short period of time, besides that win, you had 3 seconds and 3/3
Didn't know that.
in just that 6-week
weeks.
period.
I didn't know that.
So you hadn't raced in 6 years, and so you get back into a car and you're instantly competitive.
It was so easy to drive. These new cars, they're professionally built.
For you.
Did that give you the itch, Jay, to keep on going,
No, it didn't,
or
and
did
I-
you say, 6 weeks,
No,
I'm out
I
of
don't
here?
know why I didn't either. Should have. I was 35 years old.
I was going to say, you were young enough, you could have
I
still
could
done it.
have at 35, yeah. I quit when I was, I quit when I was 35. I must have been 42 then. But, no, it was easy, the car. I don't know why I didn't. Well, I wasn't going to continue for Bill because I always told him if I'd have kept driving for him, we wouldn't be friends. And we are friends. He'd be difficult to race for full time.
We've got a couple more questions, and certainly anybody else has questions, but the one we've asked everybody, is thinking the last lap of a feature, and if you're in the lead on that last lap, who among the drivers you raced against would you least like to have in your rear view mirror coming up at you? Who was the driver you just didn't want to have?
Bobby.
Bobby? Yeah.
Ronnie would be next.
Yeah. Why would that be?
He never quit.
Yeah.
He's like a bulldog. They get a hold of your pant leg, they won't quit. He just never quit.
He would not.
This is Bobby?
You wouldn't even know.
Bobby
yeah.
just never quit. He'd just dog you. In fact, I always felt bad about that. The last race that I drove for our late model, the last race at Stateline, I had it won. And I got into 3 a little deeper than I maybe should have, and I had rear axle hop, which we never did. That was not, I won't say never, but when we had it, we fixed it. And Bobby slid right up inside of me and went on and won the race. So I lost the last race that I ever drove our Ford late model to Bobby. But you don't want him behind you. I didn't care. If it was open track, it wouldn't be too bad. Because I could concentrate on just out, keeping ahead of him. But Ronnie was, did I tell that story right? I was second?
You, in the last race you ever ran for your own late model, Bobby won, you were second.
Yeah,
and,
he beat me in the last lap, and I,
It was a 50 lapper.
yep, I had it won, and I must have got in a little hot, and the back end chattered a little bit, and then you had to let off, go straight, or you're going to spin out. There's Bobby. But
Let me just tell you, the guy who, when we asked that question of all the 50s and 60s guys, there was one unanimous answer.
We know who that was.
It was Tom Dill. Honest to
Bill,
God.
yeah.
It was just
oh,
incredible.
you mean who you didn't want behind him?
Yeah.
I didn't care if he was behind me.
Well,
I could outrun him.
yeah,
It
well,
was when he was in front of you was the problem.
well, there you go.
He used the whole track. He used the whole track on the yellow flag. And then it got worse. You mean Tom Dill was the one that people didn't want behind him?
Absolutely.
the same thing.
It never bothered me a bit. I like it when he was behind me. I had already passed him because he never started. Rarely ever started.
You don't
behind
pass,
me.
you didn't pass him on the outside.
No, he was wild.
Or the inside. You knew you were gonna get
I mean, I
by
don't
him.
know. I guess he was talented, but he overdrove the race cars. That was my opinion. And I don't think that's the way to do it.
We have a segment on YouTube, so when you guys really get prolific and you start doing YouTube, we just put it up. It's titled "Tom Dill Remembered," and I asked the question of one guy, who was the guy, and then all of a sudden you see a whole myriad of drivers that we all know, who it is. Tom Dill, Tom Dill, Tom Dill. He'd run his mother into the fence, whatever. He would move everybody.
Jim Scott said he crashed him one night, and he says the next morning he's down drinking coffee with him,
Well,
just like nothing happened.
That was the other part of every story. Also, he'd just laugh like big deal. I just put you in the fence. I'm sorry you lost the race, but life goes on.
Yeah.
And of course you want to boom bang.
I didn't appreciate his talents as much as other people, I guess.
Well, you're so damn good.
No, just.
Well, let me just, again, I'll go up to any questions, but I'm going to start and go around and say, you guys had incredible success. I'm looking at what Randy put together in 1969 in Sportsman, Stateline and Circuit Champion. 1970, Stateline and Circuit Champion. 71, Stateline Champion. Then you quit. Late models, the 71, Stateline, Erie, Circuit Champion. 73, Erie's and Circuit Champion. 75, Stateline and Circuit Champion, and basically quit. What was the reason for all of this success in such a short period of time? I'm going to let each of you have an individual answer to this.
Like we said, luck.
Yeah,
Richard Petty always said you'd rather be lucky than good.
yeah. Do you think it was just luck? Jay, what do you think?
No, it was a combination. It was a lot of luck, but it was due to skill too,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize that it was written down, but there's an article in one of them books there. When I put that scrapbook was in pretty bad shape, and it would have never got done, put back together if it wasn't for you. So I'm glad I did. But anyway, I said then, years ago, it's in there, and I'll say it now, I had an awful lot of good talent around me. There was, those guys up there wouldn't believe it if they knew what we knew as a combined group. You know what I mean?
There's people outside of our racing that do a lot.
That's
of
another
synergy,
thing. That's
yeah.
another thing. We all had friends and co-workers and that were not necessarily racers, but they were sharp. They were intelligent or good at what they did, and we could rely on them for help, I always call them like my B team. It wasn't like they weren't as good. They just weren't full-time. Some of them never come to the garage. I had a chemist. I worked for a company, and they had a chemist. And he was just exactly what you'd think, a little mild-mannered little fella, weighed about 120 pounds, nicest guy in the world. And there wasn't anything that I could go to him and ask him that he didn't have an answer. He's just brilliant. He'd never been to a race in his life.
Were you after race fuel, Jay? Is that what you were talking to him about?
No, we didn't do anything with our fuel.
Just golf gas.
Anything this guy was just incredibly smart, and he'd never been to a race. So we had like I said, a B team, It was like Dino Vasilio, you know? Gary built all our oil pans and all our headers, you know? And oil pans, you know, they make them today. They have 8-quart capacity and have traps where you trap the oil over in the right-hand corner and back. Well, we had all that, but we did it ourselves. See?
You had to make it.
I had to make it.
Goodbye.
And we always had a dummy block and heads, and they weren't any good for anything, but they were clean. So if he wanted to build an oil pan, we had a clean block, and then you cut an old oil pan off, and then go from there. Well, this Dino Vasilio, he worked with you on a header. I don't think Dino could weld, but he was there every minute, helping him build them headers and holding and coming up with ideas too. You know, a lot of people have ideas. You know, they're not necessarily racing people. So we had a lot of help.
Well, if we'd have had a TIG welder.
Yeah, I know. We had a
we'd
buzz
did them all
box,
with gas.
Buzz box.
and gas.
That's all.
Yeah, that tubing was, if you got it fit really good, and you got a puddle started, you can go right around it. Never touch it.
Yeah, he never used a rod.
Yeah.
Gas weld without a rod, just blunt.
What was your sense of the whole team as you reflect back on this success?
I don't have any idea how we did so good. I have no idea. We just got together and, because we had no prior real racing experience or building. These guys grew up around it up there in Jamestown. We didn't. We just went up there and the spectators. And I don't know. Jay's a great driver. I mean, Christ, that's easy to figure that out. But I don't know. We just talked.
We learned
about
as we went. Believe
We just
because
learned as
we started with very little knowledge.
We had to, like I
we
said,
learned as we went.
We had to make engines conservative because we didn't have a spare. And if the engine went, we were done. So we built conservative engines that just, I said, you got to pass them in the turns. I'll get you to keep up with
That's
them down
the
the
true
straightaway.
story.
I'll
That's-
get you enough power to keep them up down the straightaway, but you get the turn, you got to pass them there.
If
So,
we had a drag race with those guys, we'd have been in the tail end.
those guys had way more power than we did. They didn't think so.
Nah, oh, well,
Well, we had enough power.
we had enough,
We had enough.
but there was some of them had more.
Some of them had a lot of power. But,
That Dick Burton's,
Boss
Uncle?
6.
yeah,
boy,
boss six.
that guy was clever.
Yeah, he was real clever. Yeah, he was really clever.
So, Bill, you've been Jay's wingman for so long here. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. What is it about him that impressed you?
Well, he's always been neat. He's always been thinking, and we could always talk stuff over and not have a problem.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's
all
big.
of us, we had
All
what's
of us
called synergy.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
We never had a fight.
best
Never.
time in my life.
Never had a fight.
We never had an argument or anything about
We
anything.
would agree on things,
Yeah,
but we'd
right.
work it out.
And then we'd figure out and say, well, maybe we'll try this week, and then next week we'll try this.
Usually, if it was 2 against 1, the one guy figured he might be wrong if the other 2 thought. You know what I mean? No, we never had a fight.
No,
Never.
No, you
Never had a
said it
race
was the
car.
best time of your life.
as far as
Oh
I'm
yeah, I think
concerned, it
so.
was.
For me too.
Probably me too.
If I had a way to do, I'd go back and do it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I would. But you can't do it now. It's a
No.
lost era now.
Okay, just curious now that here you are. Again, this is 30-some years ago, almost 40. Is it hard to go to the track now?
I've been to a racetrack. Jay goes a lot. I want to go with him. You know, if he goes.
We're gonna go get together this year and go to some big shows. We're a
He
couple.
wants me to go. He calls me all the time, but I've been kind of messed up, and I didn't want to mess his night up because of me. Because we used to travel the pits and look at stuff and everything, and I couldn't do that for a while. Maybe a little bit down the road I'll be able to. I'm starting to walk a little bit now, but I don't know whether I'm ready to cruise the pits.
Do you go to the races anymore, Gary?
Haven't been to Stateline or Erie since we quit.
And it's not something you think about, or
Yeah, you think about it, you go there and you say, boy, I used to do this. I'd love to do this again, But closest I've been, I go to Lernerville several times and watch the Outlaws.
You follow outlaw sprint car racing more than you do anything, don't you? Yeah.
We went a
I
couple
did-
times after we quit racing. Didn't you and I? We went up a couple times, you know. To see, mostly go up just to see the
Oh, I
guys that
take
we
that
raced
back.
with.
I
You
went
know,
to
some
Skip-
to see Skip and
Sharon one time.
yeah.
And it started snowing on the way down. He said, it's just lake effect.
Yeah, that's right. We went to Sharon at this time of year.
Yeah.
Oh, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Got snowed out.
Got snowed out.
And they sent us. They said the refunds will, the checks will be
Yeah.
tickets.
Yeah.
They wouldn't give you money.
Yeah.
It'd be in the mail. By God, they did too.
I did go to Smithport one time. And the only
I go to a
reason-
lot of races.
I was over at Smithport a couple times. I just went over to Smithport, but you know, I went in the pits because I knew some guys that were racing. That's more. I was more interested in seeing the guys and you know what was going on than actually watching the races. And it's not the same. You know, it's not the same. You put the fast cars up front. There's no race. He just takes off and goes, and that's the end of the race. And when we started,
Well, like I said.
20th every night, just about.
Yeah.
They had Stateline had a unique at that time. They started the race where the last week's feature winner would be like 20th.
20th.
And then the high point man in points would start 19th and then toward the front. Well, there were guys that played that point system.
Oh, yeah.
So
And then they even changed it, and they'd average your last three.
Yeah.
And they had all kinds of, and what it made for good racing, because fast cars were always in the back, except for the guys that played games. And I know there was several of the local guys that they'd just come to the racetrack on Saturday night and say, oh, we couldn't get the engine done. Well, they just set that one out to lower their average, so they'd start up front. They weren't going to win. They weren't going to run for points anyway.
You want to name names, Jay?
Nope. You're taping. and he's your lawyer now. But
We've heard a few names. Just curious. Just curious.
but it was a good. I'm not saying it was a bad system,
It was a great system.
It was great.
but it's.
I'll tell you what, when you won with that system, you
You
did
won.
something.
You passed somebody.
You didn't win a race until you started in the back and passed everybody. You don't win a race by starting up front. You just ended up in front. When you start in the back and pass every car and end up winning a race, you've won the race.
Right. We always felt that. Now today the cars are so equal, and
Going too
that
fast.
won't work now. They start the fast cars up front. And they all win. I still go.
Well, in your movie, Randy, you talked about a particular driver who started in the front and actually ran and for 25 laps, won, and President Frank Ruhlman, who said, if so-and-so wins,
Oh, yeah.
It's a true story.
yeah,
Joe Tomes,
Joe
the guy you
Tomes.
talked about earlier today. He started on the pole in a
Mercury.
58 Mercury.
65 Mercury that was as long
like a
as
taxi
this
cab.
room.
Yeah.
Stayed out front the whole 25 laps, and Frank Rome says, if he can win, I don't need to be here.
That's a true story. Yeah, I've heard that also.
Yeah, Russ Thompson told that story.
You know, there's an event here. Let me just throw this out, Randy. We've never discussed this, but the reality is this particular fun thing of the sportsman's class during this time period. When you really think about it, and again, I'm playing more to my memory bank, but between you and Ronnie and Skip.
Bobby.
Lyle
Bobby.
Brown. Bobby
Brown.
come in later. Bobby didn't run a sportsman for the first couple of years that I was there.
Right. Till Frosty
Lyle
built him
Brown.
one.
And he come in, and then he
Jerry
was
Seeley.
something to be.
Yeah.
Well, he came in when they changed the V8s.
Yes, you're right, Gary.
In the reality, you know, there's a fun, even if it's just an event, evening event, where all these guys, one place, one time.
The beauty of it is most of these guys are still alive.
I know.
Just
We would-
because of the
Age-
time frame.
Yeah, time.
Yeah.
Time frame, yes.
Yeah, you lost those first 10 years. You lost a lot of those guys. You lost some of them since you started producing.
We lost another one last week.
Yeah, you know.
Joe Mobilia
I didn't know that.
died last week.
I know he was in the movie. Yeah, you have the advantage here, they're a little bit younger now. I was 28, evidently. You said 68 we went there?
Yeah, I was 24.
You was 24 and I was 28. But you see, a lot of those guys are older.
We didn't know anything. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm 24 years old. What the hell do I know? You guys don't believe we didn't
Yeah,
know
but you
anything.
were-
Well, it is hard to believe given your success, you know.
You're a previous car
Hey,
owner.
we just stopped, and you just stop and think, well, if this does this, and that, well, if we do it this way, maybe it'll work. So that's what we
We
did.
work more on our brakes
Brakes and suspension.
than suspension. We work more on our brakes than the engine, by 10.
Yeah, the engine.
We
was
had our
in
own
there.
brakes. We
The
had
engine was no problem, we didn't have to do anything to the engine, never. We just pull it out mid-season.
front brakes,
rebuild it,
the
put it
first
back
car,
in.
we had a conglomeration on there.
Yeah.
Had a valve.
Lincoln, rear Lincoln rotors,
Yeah,
Chevy
that's on the late model.
truck calipers or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And then we made our own anchors where you bolt it, you had to get them from.
We had to make everything. You couldn't
We
buy
made it, and,
Mine.
but they were indestructible.
We had Ford spindles.
Yeah.
Ford spindles.
But it would do, but I could run a 100-lap race at maximum, whatever
Brake
I
never
was
faded.
capable of doing, it never faded, They weren't, all. I mean, we had to work to get to that point. The brakes were pretty good from the get-go.
So we're-
That first late model, we had rear caliper, we had
Rear
calipers
disc
on
brakes.
the rear.
Discs on the back?
Yeah, we were the
Nobody-
first.
Nobody had that.
No, they said they were no
You know what
good.
you know where we found them?
Time period.
We wanted little, we could have bought big, well, all that do is,
Yeah.
we found them, dealt with a guy in Florida, Ken Sickles, he worked for Franklin Differential. And he, the one that steered me on them, they were made by Hearst Earhart, and they designed them for the little cars at Disney World where you get in and they go through the parking lot. I'm telling you the truth. They go through the parking lot and they follow one another. You know how those cars?
Yeah.
Well, they had these little caliper brakes on there. And that's all the bigger they were, very
They were
big.
still way more than we needed.
Well,
Side bite on them was about like that.
we had to work, we did a lot of work on them, they were a lot of maintenance. They
Oh,
weren't made
boy.
for running in dirt and salt.
Yeah, they'd leak.
We
off.
had an awful
They were
time.
magnesium.
Yeah, and they corroded. We had
That's
had
small.
about had at least six, like 3 or 4 sets. And we had to rotate them a lot and hone them and new O-rings. And then we found the secret is to keep the
Shim.
pistons all the way back in.
Yeah.
So I had literally that many shims made just like a puck.
Yeah.
And as that
night.
brake puck wore,
Every night you'd
then every week we'd hose them and clean them and blow them out
Stick a shim
and
in.
shove them back and put the shim, 10,000, 20,000, whatever
Oh,
it
wow.
take. And then another
Then
thing,
they wouldn't be coming out.
then they would keep that piston back in there.
Yeah.
And that, we finally got it,
I
we
see.
ran the same ones for 4 years. I mean, we had different, same devices.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also would never change, like, we didn't change our brake pads. We changed a brake pad. We never had all new ones on. They were at various stages of being worn. And we take the one that was worn the most and put a new one in. That way, you only had one brake pad to break in, not all of them. So we always had constant brakes, see?
That was a big thing,
Brakes were a big thing then. We had, the cars, you had to stop. There was no momentum track. And you stop, and you had to stop straight. So we worked on our brakes a lot. After every 50 and 100 lap race, he'd purge the system and put new fluid in, That fluid would be burnt or dark. Get rid of it.
Couple of names before we conclude here that I don't know if your paths even crossed. Stroker McGurk. Is it-
Remember him.
Remember, but
And-
Remember,
Yeah, I never talked to him.
I
I
didn't
saw him
never
in
know
the-
what his real
and,
name was
you know, I
until
remember.
that. I
Yeah.
thought it was Stroker McGurk.
So did I.
So did we!
That picture of his coupe, I remember, boy, he used to try to give Ronnie fits with that coupe, but he just couldn't get her done.
yeah.
Keith and Gary built a flathead Ford engine, well, not before I knew you, but before we raced. And they built it under Gary's back porch with a dirt floor. And,
In the cellar.
In the cellar.
Oh, was it solid?
Yeah, we had a coffee table set up there.
Well, they worked on this thing for years, and I'll tell you what, they put it in that old Ford that I have a picture of, that they bought, that had been raced for 18 years. And Stroker's engine was not as good as that, I don't
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Well, that thing
It was
smoked.
probably the best, local. There was nobody had a flathead Ford that was that good then.
I mean, it smoked.
It
I mean,
was a
would-
good one.
it
I
would
took
really-
pictures of it because I cut the release around the valves, and you always poured and relieved the flathead. I cut the release and did the porting, and then I polished everything. I even tulipped the intake valves and polished them.
Yeah, that was a neat
You take a
engine.
picture, it almost ruined the picture
I mean,
because it was
it
so
was flat.
shiny. But
I mean, It would
They
not.
put it in that, they had it in that old coupe they bought.
Yeah, we didn't have any.
And that's the one that didn't have, there wasn't anything straight on
We
it,
didn't
including
have-
the frame.
We didn't even have a, you talk about Shade Tree Mechanics, we didn't have a garage.
No, they,
No, outdoors.
they had me drive it for a little bit, and we went to Olean. I'd never been there, and they'd never been there. And I was second, I think. And there was a big race the next week, and I said, if you change gears in that, you got way too much gear.
That was a project.
Yeah.
Changing
And I said, you gotta
gears.
put bigger tires on it, because I don't have enough gear. It's just humming, you know? They said, okay, but you gotta help. I said, I'll be up. Outside, under a tree. And they picked it up, and they take this differential out from
The
under
whole
the
thing.
Ford. You take the whole thing. I know why they didn't wanna change gear. It took all day. You ever
Right.
do it in them old,
Oh, the right
pre-49?
hand, yeah, right hand
Torque
axle
tube.
comes out the left side.
Yeah, that tell you anything?
Yeah, oh,
And
We had a
change the
record
gears?
one time, 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You're kidding me. Well, they put the gears in. I don't know if I helped, but I was there and got wet and cold. And they put bigger tires on it. We did win that 50-lap race over there the next week.
And they
I think
told-
that was the end of the car. I think you saw
that was
it.
the last race of the year over there. We only went over there a few times.
I was only there twice. with
Yeah,
you.
it was- that's
That was
still-
Olean.
Oh, yeah.
That was
The
the only
rock
two
pile.
times it was there, the rock pile, yeah.
We're looking at an old program. A couple weeks ago, we had an event where we showed the movie, and Bobby Schnars came, and we interviewed Bobby at a church. If you can imagine Bobby in church,
Yeah.
that alone, that alone drove the crowd. I mean, in Bustad, they couldn't believe it. We got to see this, Bobby Schnars in church. Well, anyways, there was a program that was passed out that Randy put together, and there was a guy from Bradford who, frankly, we know nothing about. He drove 0-0. His name was Johnny Wyoming. Does that
I
name?
remember
name.
him.
Okay.
I remember him,
remember
yeah,
the
Johnny
car.
Wyoming. I remember him.
It was spelled weirdly, Wyoming.
Yeah, I just remember, see, I was not very old then.
There was just a few guys from
What,
Bradford.
you know, there's a fella, he's an old fella, like us, that works at Value Home Center, and he, Ingram, was it Ingram? Obie Ingram.
Opie Ingram.
Obie.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
he's still alive.
yeah.
I asked him one time, I said, are
He
you
one of
really
us?
Obie Ingram? He said, yeah. I said, he used to race.
We've got some videotape that Mrs. Layfield, what was her name? Betty.
Betty.
Layfield gave us some, that would be Bill's widow.
Right.
Okay.
She gave us some videotape of when Dean Layfield was racing at Smethport
Smethport and Bradford.
in about 55.
Right.
And there's another car that is keeping up with Dean, and it's Obie Ingram.
Yep.
Yeah.
So from 55, and
Yeah.
that guy's got to be.
He's in his 80s.
I was going to say he's got
works
to
at
be well
the
into his
hardware
80s.
store.
In Bradford, yeah, Value Center.
Well, didn't he drive a
Uh-oh.
DeSoto?
Cool.
Road trip. If you don't get Obie on tape, you'll never get
You'll
him.
never get him. Obie,
I think his car number was 711 or something like
you
that.
know something like that?
I was really little.
There
then.
was a 00.
I was 11.
There was a
55,
that,
I'd be 11 years old.
I don't
so.
know that. I call my brother-in-law tonight and ask him if he knows about him.
Yeah.
Johnny Wyoming. I remember that
Johnny
name. I
Wyoming.
mean, how could you forget Johnny Wyoming?
I remember hearing the name.
Yeah,
It's
but I
Smithport.
can't say as I saw, I know him or anything like that.
Yeah, there was just a few guys from Bradford that used to race. It was Gus Nelson used to race.
Yep.
And,
6 and 7/8.
yeah, and,
Yeah, Bradford never had much of a history as far as going up to your tracks. You know, with any great success. Joe Tomes kicked their butt one night, but
That's what you call it, don't you?
who was it? Chuck Godding used to race for Jerry Farrell, wasn't it? Chuck Godding used to race?
but I doubt if they ever went
And
to
Bill Halleck, he
Stateline,
wasn't.
though.
No, they don't.
See,
race
that's
Stateline.
all.
They raced. I remember they used to race at Skyline.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bradford didn't have much of a history for anybody going up there.
No.
I don't think anybody ever went up regular until we did.
No.
And then Erie was quite a haul, you know. There was no.
Of course,
we
we'd never
couldn't-
been to race Erie. First night we went there, we'd never been
We were
there.
late getting there.
Never even saw the place. Didn't know anything about it. All we heard was a little bigger. So we figured, well, we better put a bigger gear in.
But we went to Erie. I don't think anybody. Jerry, there was Bradford guys that raced at Stateline in Erie over the years, but not they didn't take it, so that wasn't their main track. I don't think,
The Shimps did for a while.
but
Yeah, they didn't do
not
much.
steady. But it was a haul, you get home,
Two,
2, 3
3
o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, and I used to shower and I'd lay on the living room floor. I didn't go to bed because you don't have to get up if you don't go to bed,
Well, we used to stop at that.
I used to do that in college.
We used to stop at that car wash in Warren
Yeah.
and leave a big mess.
Yeah, some of the nights it was pretty messy up there, yeah.
Yeah.
That duck's not, they used to.
Pull in
put
there,
on
there'd be
racetrack.
mud.
That was the
We'd
problem
leave.
with Erie, is getting home so late. Stateline wasn't a problem because it was Saturday,
Yeah.
you know.
But
then we
if we had a problem,
Yeah.
We
didn't have any
didn't have a lot of
No,
problems.
No, we just-
We did a tremendous amount of maintenance.
You work in the car during the week.
There wasn't anybody that had, and in my opinion, I don't think anybody had the maintenance program that we had.
Well, that's the one good thing, when Jay was driving the car, I mean, he had to work on it too, so he didn't wreck it.
Yeah, there is a difference.
made my job easier, there was very little collision work.
Yeah, so we
Boy,
didn't.
Russ was the opposite. He used to say, hey, don't be afraid to bend it up. We like to do body work. I didn't really want to hear that, but he did. He never complained.
Yeah.
He never complained about
You
anything.
can't win a race wrecking.
I got something that was on Russ Thompson's interview, he said Jay was a neat neck.
Neat neck.
Neat neck, yeah.
And he was. Keith would be underneath the car checking bearings or something. Jay'd be pulling the wrenches, wiping them off and putting them away.
I wasn't even done with him.
Yeah.
I used to fall asleep under
He'd
that,
fall,
too.
I'd be sitting there working under the car doing something, and I'd be talking away, and pretty soon I'm talking to myself because he's over there sleeping. Fell asleep in the race car one night.
Oh, There was a problem like on them long yellows or red flags. You sit there in front of the flag stand, the engine running hot, fall asleep. Embarrassing, but it's not.
Tracy, anything you want to ask Jay?
No, I was just, I was only 9, 10, and 11.
Yeah.
And I just came to hear some Russ stories, basically.
Well, that's our story. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
We have stories that we could.
But it
tell.
hasn't changed. I mean, that's the way.
I got it.
telling you exactly the way it was.
You gotta know about the transmission.
They got to know about this transmission deal. I mean,
A lawyer.
Now we're
well,
getting
we won't
somewhere.
mention any names.
Yeah, that's it.
But
Statute of limitations helps you there
yeah, well,
tremendously.
the transmission that we
Had one, yeah.
Yeah, the Fairway Ford gave us, it wasn't really the transmission, but it would work, so we used it. And it was out of a 6-cylinder Ford.
We wanted it because of the ratio.
Yeah,
That was
because
not an
we had
accident.
some gears that we could put with it and make it work, so.
We understood gear ratios.
Yeah, and so we had it in the car, and we raced it a couple nights, and then we decided to go to open Wattsburg. And they said, well, that's on a Friday night, and the guys were going to go up there, and I said, well, why don't we go up? So we did. We loaded the car up, and we went up to Wattsburg, went out and raced, ripped out second gear. All right, this is Friday night, so we got to go Stateline Erie.
Well, there was a big race the next night. wasn't there?
Yeah, I said, what are you going to do? We can't get parts to fix it. Can't, it's an oddball transmission. And one of the guys that was with us that worked for a dealership said, hey, I think we have one on the lot. He says, what do you mean? He says, I think there's a car down there just like that.
Identical.
6-cylinder with a standard shift. He says, let's go check it out. Let's get home. So we loaded up and we headed home. And he goes, yeah, same thing, just what we need. Same ratio, same transmission, bolt it right in. So he got the keys, went inside. Oh, he got it through a window, didn't he?
I wasn't in on that.
No names. He didn't know anything about it.
We didn't do it. It's funny, true story.
True story. So he gets in, gets the keys to the car. It's out in the used car lot. Grabs the car, drives it. We pull it into the
Body shop.
body shop. Jack it up in the air. Put tape around it. And
Like
paper
it's
all
going to be
around.
painted?
Yeah, paint it all around so nobody can see
Take the
underneath
transmission
it.
out.
Pull the transmission out of it. Pull the transmission out of it. Take it up to the house. It's at the garage. Put it in the race car. Go to
Race
State
Saturday
Line
night?
Saturday night. Go to Erie Sunday night. Get back Sunday night. Pull the race car in the garage. Yank the transmission out of it.
He had to go into work about 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
He worked there. Put the transmission
Put the
in.
transmission in the car. Pulled all the paper off it. Put everything down. Drove
Put
it
it
back
back.
out. Parked it back in the lot. Hung the keys up. Nobody ever knew the difference.
Didn't hurt it.
Didn't hurt a bit.
Didn't hurt a thing.
So you worked at Fairway then?
No, it wasn't Fairway.
Oh, it wasn't Fairway. Oh, okay.
It don't
No, we
matter.
weren't
It don't
gonna,
matter.
we are
Being
not,
that we didn't steal anything, I
We
think
didn't
probably
steal
the
anything.
owners would, he's dead anyway. They'd laugh about it anyway, because we didn't steal, never intended on stealing.
Just
And
wanted to
we didn't
borrow.
put the,
We just borrowed it, yeah.
we didn't put the junk one in or anything like that.
You were testing it.
we were testing.
Testing it. That's it. Oh, that's a great story.
That's true story.
That's true.
Exactly. He had to go in and, you get home from Erie at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he had to go in to get the transmission in before everybody come
Yeah,
in
we-
to get it back on the lot.
We got the car back in the garage and jacked it up and yanked it out, and he took it and went in the morning and they